I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If everyone can turn their microphones on, please. All right. We will convene the meeting. As usual, we will start by reviewing and signing payroll and accounts payable. For the period ending 10/12/24, we had payroll in the amount of $42,160.18. We had accounts payable in the amount of $51,217.17. We also had a regularly scheduled ACH payment to Swayze for $255,000.
I have a question about the rec manifest. Do you want me to ask that now, or do you want me to ask that?
You can ask that with the consent agenda.
Okay.
Oh, John has a question about the rec.
Can you hang out with us for a second till we get that resolved? Perfect. All right, now we will review and approve the consent agenda. I'll take a motion and then we can discuss.
Moved.
Okay, move in a second. And John, discussion or questions?
Yeah, you may not know the answer to this, but do you have any idea about the inspection, tire rotation, and oil change? Because it's very expensive.
I have no idea.
They have a van.
They do.
Yes, but a tire rotation, oil change, and van inspection should probably not be that number.
Is it possible that they had work that needed to be done in order to pass inspection?
Maybe a new tire.
All of that's possible.
We can follow up
We
with
should probably just follow. Like, I'll.
You want to hold that check?
No, I mean,
You don't have an invoice?
We never do with the rec checks, no.
I'm comfortable moving forward on it and making sure that it gets paid, because I'm sure that it's not a problem. But I would like to be able to follow up with Andy.
Sure.
If we can just make a note.
You can follow up with Andy.
I would like to be reminded.
We will definitely do that. Okay.
Sherry, remind me to follow up.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. And in terms of what is in this week's consent agenda, we have the public minutes from 10/8, non-public minutes from 10/8 and 10/9, which are both sealed, the rec manifest, as we just discussed, the treasurer's report, and building permits. We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'm an aye, so we will pass the consent agenda. Thank you. And then we will turn to public comment in just a moment. I do want to give a little preamble before public comment, because I'm sure some folks are here to discuss the newsletter, as I know is a popular topic that a lot of people have strong feelings about. I do just want to set the table for people so that they understand that Jim and I have been in conversation offline. And when we had our meeting last week and the board asked Jim some questions, some of the answers that he gave, he has now come back to us to indicate that he feels that there is more information that would change some of the answers that he gave, and therefore has asked for a potential reconsideration of the payment to the Brentwood newsletter. He and I have been engaging back and forth in that and have agreed that we will review some additional information, particularly some emails that have gone back and forth between town employees and BNL volunteers and staff, and that we will put this reconsideration on a future agenda, likely next week, depending what works for them and for us. And so anyone who is here to express thoughts and feelings about the newsletter is 100% welcome to do so, but just wanted to level set so that people understand where we are at before you come up to give those comments. And so I will now open public comment at 6:08. And we do ask that you come up to the front table and turn the microphone on so we can record you. And remember, as always, to give your name and address. And Joyce, I think we're good with you now. Thank you.
Joyce, thank you.
Thank you so much. And so please feel free to come up and speak about any topic of your choosing. And we'll start at 6:08.
Liz Faria, South Road. I would like to speak to the budget, and I would like to propose to the BudCom and the Select Board a 2.5% COLA instead of a 3% raise for town employees, since that is the federal COLA and what elderly people in town get in Social Security payments, a 2.5% increase. I would like to propose 0 merit increases with the exception of Daphne's town clerk office, because they have 5 elections this year, and that's a lot, and they do a great job. The following reasons for not having any merit is we have several assistants that are new to their jobs. One is the town administrator's assistant, one is the police chief assistant, and one is the planning board land use administrator. None of them have been here long enough to assess merit in their job, especially when the town administrator's not here. The lieutenant at the police station is going to be getting a raise because he's acting chief now. The library unfortunately had a very, an accident from the children's librarian, and she will be out for several months. Rec is likely being sued for not delivering on summer camp. And the only other thing for the budget I'd like to consider is taking the municipal complex, which is now estimated between 24 and 28 million, off the table and getting it back to a police station only. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next commenter? Eric? Oh, Eric got you first with the hand. Becky? Welcome. Don't forget your name and address.
Thanks, Eric Turr, Peabody Drive, 33 Peabody Drive. I did want to comment on the newsletter discussion from last week. I wasn't aware that there was going to be a discussion about that, and I did watch it subsequently. And I just want to make a couple of comments, both as myself, as an individual in town, and as the state rep, since I have had a relationship with the newsletter, making my candidate, or office statements, I should say. I want to make it totally clear. I'm not here to second guess the decision that was made last week. I do think based on the rules that the newsletter set forth, there was clearly a basis for that decision, and I'm not at all saying that there wasn't. And I'm also not saying that those errors were, I don't know why they would have occurred when they were agreed. I think the reason I wanted to say something is that the agreement that was put in place when the funding was agreed to, I think I'd said at the time, was going to be an awkward situation, to have basically this relationship where the funding could be withheld sort of, after the fact based on sort of the adherence to the rules. And so I guess when I looked at it, I was thinking there are going to be bumps along the way with the way that this is structured. I guess what I'm hoping is that going forward, that this doesn't blow up the progress that had been made. I just wanted to make it clear that, I was the first one years and years ago to bring the issues that were emerging in the newsletter to the select board. It was a long road. It was kind of a messy road, but I do think things are different, and I wanted to put that forward. I think just the conversation I saw last week, there was acknowledgement that something had happened that shouldn't, that was done improperly. It was more technical than the things in the past, but it was acknowledged from the get-go. I look back at years past and issues I had when I was running as a candidate and, having statements dropped, having statements changed, having, the political back and forth, the endorsements and the attacks and stuff, all that's gone. It was a very clean process this cycle. I was told when we were going to be talking about the elections, what the limits were going to be. Everything was run, cleanly, and everything sort of was what I would hope would be in the process. So that's all I wanted to say was, yes, there were definitely violations of some of the technical provisions in that, but I'm hoping that on both sides there's a path forward to keep, the positive changes moving. So that's my.
Thanks for your comment.
Yep.
Next, Becky?
Becky Dunham, 9 Block Drive. It's a totally different topic. I just spoke to Tracy Dakota last year or the year before. I worked with her on placing a bin in the front hallway where we could collect flags that were going to be retired, American flags. And we collected about 20 or 30 of them. I'd like to do that again this year, and Tracy's willing to go to the scout troops for the collection, but I would like to do that. It's a good way to respectfully retire the flags. It gives the Boy Scouts something they can work on for their badges for their troops, so I would like to be able to do that. So if that's okay.
Who was the point person on that, or who do you suggest would be the point person responsible for collecting those? And
Tracy and I
Tracy.
both did that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we could do that again this year.
okay, we can
Okay.
certainly bring that up. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Betsy Ibbotson, Spravel Road. Jen, thank you for reconsidering the stuff on the newsletter. As I sat there last week and listened to that, I was really upset that Andy didn't tell anybody until he was asked. To me, if you have a problem with someone in town, an organization, a newsletter, whatever it is, the first month something should have been said. The second month it happened again. Why wasn't something said? The third
Betsy,
month-
hold on. Sorry, this is not an Andy issue, and I'm
didn't say
gonna.
It's an Andy issue.
Okay, that's very clearly what I heard. So I want to be extremely clear. No town employee is at fault in any of this. A town employee responded to a request from the select board. They didn't know why. They simply responded. Okay, so there is no one at fault here, and I want to be exceptionally clear. The town employees in this town do incredible work, even in very hard circumstances, as we all know. And I want everyone to know we have their backs. No town employee did anything wrong in this circumstance. There was a question, there was a response, and that's it.
Thank you, John. Go ahead, Betsy.
And now I'll finish what I was saying, John, and I did not accuse anybody. I'm saying as a general statement, if you have an issue with what's going on, you need to go tell somebody. You don't wait 3 months and then say, oh yeah, by the way. Did they violate things? Yes, they did. And I've said before, my problems with the Brentwood newsletter have been resolved. So I don't have an issue with them. Could that change? It could, I don't know. But I'm saying if there's a problem, you don't wait 3 months to have it addressed.
Thanks, Betsy. Other commenters?
Jim Hazard, 33 Mohawk Lane, speaking as the editor of the Brentwood newsletter. Just, I believe neither myself, the rec, nor the select board was really given enough time to investigate or understand the issue of those highlighted sheets that were sent to us actually on the day of the meeting. The rec director wasn't present, and no one else really was aware because it was never placed on the agenda. But since last Tuesday, I've reviewed all the emails from the rec director to the B&L from May through October. I believe they clearly show that there weren't any complaints from the rec to the B&L. They simply show that we were just creating a monthly rec column in the B&L on behalf of the rec director. The modifications made by our layout volunteer were done in some cases with help from the rec department. I believe these actions show the B&L had tacit consent to produce the monthly rec summary in the B&L and that we didn't violate any of our policies. Both the B&L layout volunteer and I were very proactive with the rec director to make sure that his needs were met to the best of our abilities and the space availability in each issue. I also reviewed an email from February of 2023 documenting a meeting that I had had with the rec director at that time. I had just started really working with the B&L. I really had requested that the rec would provide all the specifics like day, date, time, not any generic statements on items that they wanted printed in the B&L. Even though it would take more time for the rec to create a specific highlight list for the B&L, it would allow the rec to control the specific content to share in each issue. It also makes a lot more sense for the rec to be the one controlling the items and details for each B&L issue. Unfortunately, this never came to fruition. Instead, the B&L just continued to create the rec summary with a QR code that we created for the rec department, pointing to their website in every issue. But based on all these discussions and emails I've reviewed, I really don't think there's any reason for the board to refuse payment to the B&L. And per the statement of assurance, I believe that the B&L board did give this board, quote, objectively reasonable satisfaction that the above provisions and standards have been met. I did receive an email from the chair last night stating that based on this information, she'd be giving me the opportunity to address the board at a future meeting. And I just want to thank her for that. And I also want to say that I do agree with Mr. Morgan. I do not think that the rec director had made any mistake. He told me to my face that he clearly just did what he was told to do. He highlighted differences from month to month. And when I asked, well, you know, one thing that you said, people were taking that to mean that it wasn't in there. And, you know, like the 4th of July parade, you highlighted it, but it was really in a flyer. But he just said, I just did what I was told. And I believe that's what he did. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Other commenters? Lois?
Nice to be back. I have four
You
questions.
want to have a seat?
Lois
has-
is down.
Oh, you're handing stuff out.
I would like to give you the questions because I'll read them and then I would like answers.
Lois, just to remind you that this is public comment and not necessarily public question and answer, so the board does not always or often answer questions during public comment. You're welcome to ask them and put them out there, but just to remind you.
I was so surprised to hear us on TV. Heard tonight we were going to have these questions, so that's why I did this. You said that the board would have questions. I have those questions. I don't know if you heard that news class at 5 o'clock. I mean, on the 96.7. Okay, those are my questions. One, the select board noted an investigation on the Brentwood Town Administration, Karen Clement, and Police Chief John Ventura leave. How long has this investigation been going on? Question one. Two, can your select board confirm if the town administrator, Karen Clement, and Police Chief John Ventura are on paid leave, and how long will this leave continue before coming to resolution? Three, is there any correlation with the defunding the Brentwood newsletter, local media last Tuesday, and approximately 12 hours later, town scandal occurs with the town administrator and chief of police? Four, since John Morgan is running for executive counsel of the New York State office, he is seldom physically present at select board meetings and has a personal vendetta toward the Brentwood newsletter. Does John wish to opine on the investigation and continue voting down and attempting silence of the local media?
So I will respond to this, Lois. We're not going to answer many of these specific questions. What I will say is that both of these town employees are on paid leave. We do not know how long this leave will go on, but we will keep the town updated. And there is zero correlation between these two issues. They just happen to occur at the same time. That's all I'm going to say in reference to your questions. But thank you.
Fine. Thank you.
Anyone else interested in public comment? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment at 6:22. We will move on to our discussion action items. And the first one that we have is Lieutenant Doty talking to us about car 4. Come on over.
So just an update to the board. So you guys were kind enough to allow us to purchase that new car after car 4 decided that it was tired and no longer fixable. So car 4, the old car 4, is sitting down at the upfitter right now. The only salvageable items in there are the radio and the radar, which are going to get transferred to the new car. All the lighting and everything like that is old and obsolete and have to be disposed of. So the last police car that we sold, I think only sold for $250. The upfitter right now is willing to fully strip the car, dispose of what needs to be disposed to, include the graphics, which will be about 8 hours of labor at $125 an hour, so a total of $1,000 if we just more or less sign the title over to him. As a PD official, I think that's a great deal because we have no use for this car, and if he wants to use it as a demo car for his upfitting business, you know, that's on him as long as he obviously accepts it that it's going to be sold as is. Because otherwise we got to eat that $1,000 anyways to strip the thing.
Okay.
So
Okay. Board questions or comments on this for Lieutenant Doty?
Do you go after you stripped it all to verify that all of the stuff that was supposed to come out came out?
Yep. We have a great relationship with him, so he does a great
Is
job.
it our standard upfitter? That
Yeah,
helps
we
new vehicles?
well we switched to him last year. We were using a different one, but that old company decided to push the smaller agencies way on the back burner. But this company, Atkinson, has been amazing to us. I mean, to the point where he lives locally, so we had a spotlight die. He just swings by on his way home and fixes it for us. So
Great.
yeah, we have a great relationship with him.
Any other board questions or comments, Paul?
Yeah, just so I'm clear, so it's $1,000 that is on the table for us to
Yeah,
accept as
so-
an offer?
So we'd realistically save $1,000 in the stripping of the car.
Basically an in-kind trade.
Yeah,
He'll do the labor for free
if he
if
keeps the
we
car.
give him the car, as opposed to selling the car. Sounds like what you're suggesting.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Is there any sale value?
The last one went for $250, and that car actually worked. So
So you can
I would say-
extrapolate from that.
I would
what
say
you
this is a
wish.
pretty good deal.
Yes.
Make a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It looks like none opposed, and I'm an aye, so yes, you can go
Perfect.
ahead with that. Thank
Awesome.
you.
I will let you guys do review the bill of sale prior to obviously signing it over. So
Perfect.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was quick. All right. Next, we're going to review some budgets. As everyone is aware, our town administrator is out on leave, and so we do ask for a little humor and patience with the select board as we move forward in the budgeting process. We do have in the packets that have been posted some draft budgets that we had as of 10/15. Some of those are a little bit different than what we are discussing tonight. And for my board's education, the last budget that is in here, which is the conservation, actually, I'd like you to disregard the last page of the packet and instead use this one that was given to us by Becky tonight that has the handwriting on it. So we're going to actually disregard the one in the packet. The other thing that my board members have in front of them, which I added, was the salary worksheet that goes with the planning board budget. So those are two new things that we have here in front of us. And we will start with the planning board and ZBA budgets. I saw some folks here tonight. Come on up. I don't know if you guys both want, yeah, take one of each. There you go. All right, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So we'll start with the 2025 budget. I also didn't know if you want to talk about this year's budget.
If you have any updates or anything you'd like to notify us about, sure.
Sure. Okay. So we'll start with 2025. We're looking at an increase of about $9,000, and that primarily has to do with changes in salary, FICA, retirement. We've included a line for overtime, which, you know, should be a buffer. We may not use that all, but want to have it there in case it's needed. We're decreasing a couple things to try to, you know, control costs. RPC, which is the Rockingham Planning Commission, their fees went up just a little bit. But overall, pretty close to level funded.
The only physical change you'll see in this budget before you is the overtime line was separated per the board's instructions.
Right, whereas in here, it's combined into one
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, I believe the philosophy behind that was just for accounting and tracking to see how much of it was used. So maybe next year we can increase or decrease that line.
Okay. So for the board, Mark and I talked before the meeting, the board numbers are off by just a few $100s from the planning board. And we, after talking with Mark, we should go with the planning board numbers for FICA and New Hampshire retirement because those were supplied directly to Mark on a worksheet from Karen before she went out. And so the assumption is that these numbers as on the proposed budget from planning are likely slightly more accurate than the ones that we see on our pre-printed page here. They're just off by a few $100s here and there. Questions from the board for Kristen or Mark about this proposed budget?
You probably said this and I just missed it. The
Yep.
long-range circuit rider, what is that one?
That is our professional planner.
That's Glenn.
Not,
No.
so the long
Oh.
range
The
line.
long-range part?
Oh, the master plan?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the,
Just says long range.
Yeah,
Oh,
every
circuit
year we
rider
put,
long range,
put
yeah.
aside $8,500 for updating of the master plan.
No, that's great. Yeah, it's circuit rider / long range. That's why I was confused. I think.
So
But-
that's a good segue for, I can talk a little bit about our 2024 budget. So for the last couple of years, we've had grant funds to cover that. So we've had a surplus in the budget. And we're expecting this year, we're probably going to have $10,000 to $15,000 surplus, both because the assistant role was vacant for a time and because of the grant funds, and we haven't needed, at least so far this year, a couple of the things. What we'd like to do going forward is, and I know this has to be done at town meeting, but just to let you know, we'd like to move to a situation where we're updating that master plan once every so many years. What we've found, we've been doing them chapter by chapter or a couple chapters a year. Some of them now are very old because of the cycle. So the overall plan's not very coherent. And we learned the other night, there was another grant proposal that was done that referenced one of our chapters. We didn't get that grant, and part of the feedback was, this can't be that important to your town if you haven't looked at this data in 20+ years. So we want something that's more up-to-date and cohesive. So I know that'll require going to town meeting, asking to set aside funds annually, and then, but the idea is that we wouldn't be spending any additional funds. We would just be spending them in a different way.
and what would the time, would it be every 5 years, every 10 years? Do you guys have a thought of what that would look like?
Somewhere in between there, probably, and I think 5 is too soon, 10's too long.
Okay.
There is a statutory requirement
yeah.
that you do have them
Right.
updated so many years.
Does
yes.
it say specifically what the,
I think the ones they focus on are the vision,
yeah,
current land use, and future land use. Those are the only three that you have a statutory requirement to have.
Yep.
It's very handy to have more.
Yeah.
I think we have a total of 9.
Okay.
It does need to be updated. We're losing grant money because of it. If you go on the town website and look at that master plan, you will know exactly why we want it
Sure, sure.
updated.
and is the thought, so right now, if we have 8,500 a year to that, is the thought that when you folks suggest a warrant, that we would fund that a little bit higher so that we could get the funds needed rather
Right.
than, because if we just do 8,500, it'll take just as long. So-
I think the ultimate goal would be to start a revolving fund.
Yep.
And instead of appropriating that $8,500 every year into our budget, we would have that automatically go into that revolving fund. And with that revolving fund, depending on the wording of it, we could use it for Glenn to update chapters. We could do it the same way we're doing it now, but I think in a much more open process. We're not asking taxpayers for any money. It's already in our budget. We just don't have time to appropriate it right now. But creating a revolving fund adds a little more transparency to the process.
Great.
I don't want to take that out now for our proposed budget until we know that we're successful at town meeting. The only other thing is we do have a couple of things that we will want to encumber funds from this year to, and I included that when I said we'll still have 10 or 15 left over.
Okay.
That includes a couple of things that we'd like to do, one of which is purchasing more microphones, and one has to do with our road standards.
Wait, why are you encumbering funds for that?
Oh, I'm sorry, that we're spending this year.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
like, that,
Yeah, that's already done, but it's not reflected in the
I
budget
see.
yet.
Okay. Board questions? Paul?
So, I mean, this could be way off, but what I'm looking at least in the paper, it says 56,000 spent to date, is what you're saying is supposed to be like closer to 100,000 by the time that
Yeah, so there's 20,000 is just, hasn't been billed yet by our circuit rider, but that is committed. About half of the salary amount, that'll be spent by the end of the year. Those are the two big ones.
and the request that has gone up from, it looks like about 7 or 8,000, is that on the, is that on you, Mark, on the administrative assistant?
Correct. It's broken down into what I've been contracted. So to answer that question, I am not part of the COLA this year.
Right.
I have a contract that leads me up. Just to answer that question, I'm not included in the COLA. Yes, and there were increases there too. There's like a 15% or 14.7% increase just in Medicare and FICA.
I mean, I don't know if you looked at whether, both of you looked at, because it's 8% is the increase, which isn't.
No, that's why I said to Chris, even came in here, I said, in the grand things, we're doing pretty well.
There's things like office supplies is up a little bit. The Rockingham planning dues are up a little bit.
Yeah. that's
So
$400 or
it's,
$500
so
thing.
it's salaries, Medicare, FICA, Rockingham planning, office supplies, all of that contributes to that increase as they've discussed.
Yeah, and we have taken some of the funds that we had left over in our budget, and we're gonna update the microphones a little bit, you know. That not only helps the planning, it helps the department.
Other questions for? So just to reiterate, rather than this number that we have in our packet of the total 127,743 at the bottom, and if you look at planning, we have the 126,742, we're actually going to substitute that with planning's number of 126,104.36. Yes. The planning number is the one that we are assuming to be the slightly more accurate number.
126,104?
Correct.
You're looking at, the 127 is with ZBA.
Yeah, that's if we, yes.
I had
sorry.
a moment
I
of
said that
panic.
first. Yes, sorry. That was the total, but we haven't talked about ZBA yet, so I backtracked. And I don't recall from prior years, do we generally vote on these separately or together?
Separate.
Separate? So if anyone has further questions about planning, let's do those now. And if not, I will take a motion for the 126,104.36.
Moved.
We have a motion and a second for the 126,104.36. All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed, and I'm an aye, so we will have a pass of that budget. And now we'll move on to ZBA.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, I tried to move.
So ZBA,
I
Mark,
thought we were included everything in that.
No.
yeah, we'll just
You
do
wanna
this one
them
quickly,
We can
separately.
do that.
Mark and I also discussed briefly the ZBA, and ZBA is level funded with the exception that advertising notices, which was at 400 last year, on our draft was down to $1, and we were not really sure why that occurred. When they brought us forward their proposal, they recommended full level funding at $1,401. So that's the slight difference you see on here.
And we've added that back in 400 for ads and notices.
Correct, because we were not clear why that was at $1.
Yeah.
Any questions about the level funded ZBA budget at 1401? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion if anyone.
Move.
For ZBA budget, $1,400. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we will pass that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the welfare budget. This is a level budget. It includes salaries with the FICA care. It's direct assistance. There's a $1 placeholder for professional training and dues. And then as this board remembers, last year, we moved the local charitable regional associations into this. It seemed to live more appropriately. Funded 1,000. The total proposed budget in front of us is level funded at 25,407. Questions from the board about that budget?
I do have a question on this. Do you remember last year, I think it was last year, we talked about the potential need to look at kind of like future proofing the welfare director. Do we have any further indication on that? Because I know that's come up before. And that
In
would
terms of a potential retirement or something like that?
That's my understanding.
I do not have the answer to that. I know, Jillian, if you have any information on that.
Last I knew, she was trying to retire. But there was,
Yeah.
yeah, no, like, I think Karen was just planning on taking over what she could for now.
Okay.
Okay, that's helpful. Can we ask the chair of the
Sure.
Conservation Commission if she
Becky,
has
would you like to
something
come up?
specific? Specific to the HR
To
element?
this budget?
Okay.
Not specific to HR, but
Okay.
welfare.
Yep.
Okay.
As part of the, Becky Dunham, speaking as a former member of the Communications Department. Over the time that the Communications Department met, we talked about the different pages on the web page that would represent different departments. What are the resources? We have not had a social services page, but Steph and I have talked about upgrading, putting something on the website, offering information about resources that individuals could use, so it's more informative. So we talked about that this morning, and Steph suggested I just contact Jen and let her know. I've offered to work on the text, and I've been in touch with Jeff Donald, who had submitted some information. So we're gonna get together at the end of the month to provide a better resource for people who are searching the webpage about information for social services.
Wonderful.
So that could be helpful to some degree, at least as a bridge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
It's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Welcome.
Any other questions or concerns about the welfare budget? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for level funded budget at 25,407.
Moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we will pass that budget as level funded. We'll now invite Becky back up for the conservation budget. And recall that we will use Becky's submitted document instead of the one in our packet.
Becky Dunham, Chair of Conservation. Please excuse my handwritten notes. I did
It's
not
very legible,
type
Becky.
out.
It's all good.
You will note that I've updated a version of the worksheet from 9/18. So in the column under this year actual, I have added what expenses the Conservation Commission has approved and shown the title where we should be as of the time when Jillian cuts the checks. So it'll show you where we will be at the end of the month at about 65% of our budget. Conservation met last week on the 9th, reviewed the budget, great suggestions. We've decided to submit a level-funded budget. We rearranged some numbers to reflect more correctly how we're using the funds. And you will note there are 3 line items that are added to the budget from the previous years. One is professional services, which would cover any contracts or assistants we've hired to do work. Second was travel and mileage, because we do go to conferences. No one has submitted anything for that in the previous years, but I think that's reasonable. And land maintenance funds for minor repairs or work on some of the easements. Those 3 were suggested and approved by Karen, and those are in there. So you'll see those 3 additional line items. We're level funded our request for next year at 12,703. I also estimated what we might be spending over the next couple of months before 12/31, which would bring us to about 81% of total. And should the contract that we've been working on with town council for a consultant come to pass with the select board, we anticipate some of that will be used because the October 3 meeting we had about conservation, there have been some nibbles about easements, so we're thinking we're going to have to use a consultant, and we would prepare for that next year. So as soon as as soon as that contract is finalized, then we're going to move forward with that.
And Becky, that would come out of that professional services
Yes, it
line?
would.
Okay.
Yes, it
perfect,
would.
Perfect. Can you speak to the 301 line item, which was listed as audit expenses, and you've written legal next to it?
Yes, the 7,250 is the expense we've agreed to pay out of the budget that was for bond counsel doing the Fuller bond. I submitted that. Karen sent it to me on the 17th of September. We discussed it on Wednesday, decided it would come out of the current budget.
Okay. And can you just, I think maybe, I'm sure the board remembers this, but we do have a conservation fund in town, which is at
Yes.
$75,000?
Yes, and we also voted last week,
Yep.
we're going to use a portion of that to do some work to fix issues with the conservation easement off of Hague Road, the Stevens Field. There's been a lot of encroachment of invasive shrubs. A lot of work needs to be done to preserve that open space. So we're going to spend about $3,000 out of the conservation fund for that work, and probably $1,000 out of our budget for that work.
Okay.
And we have a local who has offered $1,000 as a contribution towards that as well.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yes.
For the board's education, if that bond council, 7,250, could the alternate funding source of that be the conservation fund, or is it preferable to take that out of the budget?
Had a long conversation who chairs
Yeah.
at the association, said your first would be to go to the board and have them pay it. Second option is your own budget, and the last one you want to use is your conservation fund for this.
Perfect. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, I did try to move us to option
Yes.
2, so us as a board didn't have to deal with it, but if it did get beyond that, then we would bring it
Okay.
to the board.
Okay.
Going forward, if you have a legal bill that you have to pay, would that go under professional services?
It could. I don't know if another easement would be that far along by the end of next year. Sometimes these take up to 2 years.
Oh, no, I was just speaking in general.
Oh, just for
Yeah,
purposes.
yeah.
Yes, hard to anticipate at this point.
Well, I'm wondering if
Just add a
otherwise we
legal
should
line.
give a line with $1
Well,
in it, just so we can.
We could do this, Karen, and not at this, if you want to add, I'm happy to do that.
It's one of the plus minus that you could
I
do.
mean, just that way we can.
Because otherwise, this audit expense line is no longer being used.
Right, we've
Right.
left $1 in it just to
Yep.
keep it in now, but if you want to change that to a legal line, that's fine.
And leave it at $1, Letty, is that your?
Yeah, I don't think
suggestion?
we can, that same,
No,
but
No.
we,
Think about adding a legal line? Did that come up at conservation when you guys discussed this?
it came up in my conversations with Karen, Association, New Hampshire Association, and with a couple of other association groups.
Mhm.
It's all over the board. It's individualized.
I mean, given the invoice that we received, which we were all surprised,
Yep.
I think it makes sense, so we're not surprised again. So,
would you be able to take $1 out of these so that it would still be level funded, do you think? Or do you
I'm
want us
sorry, I
to,
don't understand.
do you want us to add $1 to this number?
So I'm asking for 12,704?
That's what
Or
I-
we could just
or we could
delete the
just-
301 line that has $1
Or
in
make
it
it,
right now.
yeah, make that one 0.
I wouldn't delete the 301 line because at some point they could have an audit expense.
That's true, that's true.
Yep.
Okay,
So if you want to add $1 and a legal line, that's fine.
okay.
although we were very adamant about keeping it as level funded as
Okay.
matters.
Yeah.
of
I think
principle.
$1 we can.
Would you like to, would you like to change
Unless
town
you wanna
events to
reduce.
999 instead of 1,000?
You could do that.
I mean, if it's important that it stays level funded, then we can, it's a.
I think either way.
Either way, if that's an issue, either way.
Just depends how emotionally attached your board is to having.
I like level numbers. I like even numbers.
Okay,
Okay, so 127.
Yeah.
well, it's already 703, so it's
It
not,
is.
so maybe you
Well,
should
if you
add
make it
$1, it'll be
704,
704. All right,
I move the conservation budget at 12,704.
thank you. We have a motion for 12,704 with adding a legal line with $1. Is there a second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
And I'm an aye, so thank you, Becky. We will
Thank
pass
you.
that budget for you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, that concludes our budgets for tonight. In terms of our current future schedule, we have on deck for next week Cemetery IS and Budget Committee. For those folks who are following along, we will start with regular business and we will start with regular town business. One thing that we have that needs to come back before the select board tonight is last week we signed our MS1. After that was submitted to DRA, 2 small errors were noted, and I'd like to thank Letty for working with Jim Michaud, our town assessor, and with DRA to get those resolved. So those lines have been fixed. They were small little accounting problems that we did work out. And Letty, as far as you know, this is now fully accurate.
That is my
So we just need to re-vote and re-sign on the MS1. It is just slightly different, I think, in the range of like, what was the monetary difference? It was like
I think it was
minimal.
$200.
Couple $100.
like-
It was minimal. It was just some little accounting assessing errors that had occurred, and those have been corrected. With that being the case, I would entertain a motion to re-sign the updated 2024 MS1.
Moved.
Second.
Questions or comments about that? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we'll each sign here on our line. While they're finishing that, I will just mention other town. Daphne, our clerk, has asked me to announce that tomorrow at the BRC from 10 a.m. until noon, there's a public demonstration of the Voting Works machine. This is one of the possible new updated voting machines that Brentwood can purchase, and is the one that Daphne is thinking is likely going to be the better option for Brentwood. So anyone who is interested in going to that, 10 to 12 tomorrow at BRC for a demonstration of the Voting Works machine. And I don't know if any board members are able to be there. She had invited the board to be present. So if anyone is interested or able to go, feel free to stop by between 10 and 12. I cannot be there because I'll be at work, but if anyone is willing to be there, you can let her know.
Pop
Okay.
in for
Pop in.
a little bit.
Great, great. And just as a reminder, we've already earmarked 10,000 of ARPA to purchase that new machine when we are ready to decide which one we want. All right, we will now turn to committee updates and board business, and we'll start with Andy.
I don't have anything.
Okay, John?
Nothing for me.
Okay, Paul?
So conservation, I'd ask if you have some time was spent on the budget, which we are presented, and some of the issues surrounding that. Was there?
I mentioned when I was at the table that work needs to be done on the Stevens field. It's
Right.
been neglected
Yep.
for 30 years. So that we met with the contractor yesterday. He said that back to me, and that's the project that we're working on. So it's been in discussion for a couple of years that it's needed. So we're working on that. Without doing this, the invasive are going to destroy the property. So we want to protect it. So that was one of the topics.
And I think the idea was to move forward by the end of the year with that, and that, did also result in that donation of $1,000, which was very appreciated.
Great. Wonderful.
Contractor is booked up for the next few weeks, so I anticipate it will happen in November.
Okay. For those watching the video who maybe couldn't hear Becky, Becky was just giving an update on the Stevens property, likely a contractor to help us out in November with maintenance of that property and removal of invasive species to protect that property.
Open Space Committee had met. I know you had said nibbles, but there's really nothing out there at this particular point in time for any kinds of situations, but if you want to
Thank you
update
for
or
coming up.
clarify that.
Just a little addendum. We had a number of people show up who, I said before, we sent out 28 letters encouraging people to think about a conservation easement, inviting them to the October 3 meeting. A number showed up, including some interested parties from Fremont who just wanted to learn about easements. There were a number of people who could not attend because of previous discussions or previous commitments, and we have since heard from a couple that they would like to talk. So we're going to follow up with packets of information that was handed out on October 3. I'm actually going to drop something off tomorrow, and then we're going to pursue that probably at the beginning of November.
Great.
So there has been interest and activity.
Okay, well, there's an addendum since our meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else you have for us, Paul?
No, that's it.
Okay, Letty?
The Communications Committee had their official last meeting on Thursday night of last week. Mostly snacks.
Mostly snacks.
Yep. I think that's it. There's a planning board meeting on Thursday. What else is coming? I believe the public info session on next Monday for the municipal building committee is going to be postponed until the next month.
Okay.
While the committee gets a handle on the pricing. And I think that's it.
Okay, perfect. In terms of updates for me, BudCom is meeting for a regularly scheduled meeting next Monday, but anyone who's interested in attending or watching, please just remember that we are moving the time and going to meet at 4 p.m. instead of later in the evening to allow for anyone interested to also attend a co-op meeting that is taking place that night. So that is a change in our regular meeting time, and that is on Monday, October 21st. Sorry, SAU 16. Is it the SAU budget that's being discussed that night? Yes. Thank you, Liz. Yep. It's the SAU
So it's
specific
the joint
budget.
school board meeting then.
No, it's the specific small SAU budget that just pays for the SAU staff. So it's like the
Yes.
little small
But the
budget.
joint school board, which is all of the school
Oh,
boards
correct.
smushed together, is the one that votes on that.
Correct, correct, yes. So that is later that same night. Any other board business at this time for public? Jillian, do you have anything else for us? Nope. Okay, so
Janice has her hand up.
Hand.
Janice? Sure, if
Can
you
you
can
come
you
to
come
the
up to the
microphone?
microphone or folks won't hear you on the video?
I just wanted to announce that on October 30th, that's between 7 and 9, the library will be hosting its usual candidates night. We have Melissa Hanlon and I are working on this together, and she has invited all candidates running for office to attend. And so it'll be an in-person program. People can ask questions during a question and answer period. Andy has graciously offered to help us record the meeting if you can't attend. There will not be a Zoom option, but people can submit questions ahead of time and catch the recording later.
Okay, thank you so much. So October 30th, I think that is a Wednesday? Yes, 2 Wednesdays from now, candidates night. Thank you. Any other board business? If not, I will take a vote to go into a non-public for A, personnel, C, reputation, and L, legal.
Move. Second.
We'll take a roll call vote. Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Letty?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we'll go into non-public at 6:56. Thank you, everyone, for attending. A, C, and L. A, C, yeah.